ultimate degree, and yet he finds in the manifestations of the everyday all of the same possibilities or potentialities or even luminosity that you find in the contemplative studio where he makes his paintings, or in a cathedral as so full of reverence as Vézelay. I do want to just ask you a little bit, because you mentioned the sympathies with the word luminosity. He did not just mean something that comes off the surface of a painting, per se, though he spoke in the context of painting and art and the way we do know that the best art is more than the sum of its parts, and we wish to know what that difference is between that thing that is greater than the sum of the parts and with the subtraction that this silence is about, what is that other thing, that more that we're drawn to? And I think he used luminosity not just as an artistic motif, but something that went far deeper. So could you to address a little bit of Buddhist...
I'm sure I was looking at it from a very Tibetan sort of, through Tibetan sort of lens when I was when I was actually thinking about what he said about luminosity. But the feeling I got was that he was actually, like you said, I think he was talking about something much more deep than things being illuminated and so on. I mean, he talked about that, of course. But where does that illumination come from? And of course, it comes from within. Yes. And it comes from a place of non-egoistic mindset. And he also talked about that when the egoism and all the egoic preoccupation begins to recede, then you see things. And then he was, being a painter, I'm sure he was talking a great deal about seeing and seeing, but he was talking about that and then illuminating. And in Tibetan Buddhism, we really do talk about luminosity in that way. The real luminosity comes from one's own true nature. This is what we say. Our true nature is luminous. And then this can come through our own senses, and then everything that we perceive can become illuminated. And this happens because we're not, our normal sort of states of consciousness are not operating in such a manner that it interferes with our natural sort of way of being. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are two modes of seeing things, doing things. One is we see things, do things because we're driven to engage in certain perceptual experiences or to initiate certain kind of physical interactions and things of that kind. The other one is where there is no separation between perceiving and being, and doing and being. Because normally, as Buddhists would say, in our ignorance, we conditioned to think everything in a very dualistic fashion. So being and doing are seen as very separate. But if we think of being and doing as not being separate, then we see things in a very different way, and we would also experience what we're doing in terms of our interaction with others in a different light as well. Because it's emanating from that center of one's own being, as opposed to issuing from egoic tendencies and impulses and so forth. Because egoic impulses, as Buddhism would say, is driven by two things, of attraction and repulsion. But when you are able to sort of operate on this deeper level, then that tendency has become lessened. So then you see things more clearly, and in your and how you actually enact, how you execute your actions becomes much more flexible as well. And being a painter, I'm sure he understood that. You know, if you excuse me, if you're a writer or a painter, I'm sure you know they understand that. If you're obsessing too much about what you're going to paint, you're not going to paint tomorrow. Right? You'll be thinking, I'm not ready yet. But then you never get ready, you know, and 10 years has passed, and before you become famous, you're already passé. Sorry.
You know,
but anyway.
He has that in the film. There's something wonderful in the painting film where he talks about, as a very young man, working and working and working at painting and not being very good at it. And one day realizing that there had been a moment or moments that he had put together that was good within the context of a bad painting.
Exactly.
And I love the courage of that pursuit in him. Later on in the Vézelay film, he talks about the silence permits an ability to hear that, what he called the weak voice inside.
Yes.
And so I think perhaps almost as a structural question or a technical question, what is it that we can do to feed that weak voice in all of us? We all know the way in which we are seduced by the attractions and the repelling against things, by that dialectic, by the duality that seems to be in everything, and forgetting to permit those distractions to be subsumed by an awareness of something more unified.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what Buddhism talks about. I think often in the West, when we talk about nothingness, emptiness, we tend to sort of get hold of one sort of horn of the dilemma, if that is the right expression.
Yes.
You know, meaning emptiness. So that then automatically means everything else is not real. You know, everything is unreal. But Buddhism teaches the idea of non-duality, which means that emptiness is not to be sort of put forward in such a manner that emptiness represents everything that is real and everything else is unreal. What Buddhist teaching says that the nature of everything is emptiness. So what we smell, taste, touch, everything has the nature of emptiness, which is something that we do not realize. So, so therefore, what we're instructed to do is actually to see that what we experience and what is genuinely true are not separate, but they're not identical. And it's a fine distinction, and we fail to make it, and because of that, we pay for that. But either because we take everything we see, smell, taste, touch, and think about, we can't forget that, to be real, or we think all of that is not real. There's something else, a greater reality, which has got nothing to do with the ordinary reality that we experience on a daily level. Both of these two approaches to life are wrong, according to Buddhism. So we have to think about reality in that way. To put it simply, appearance and reality. Appearance and reality are not separate. So therefore, a painting, for example, could be a great medium to express what reality is. What reality is. Because reality is not something that you can grasp at. And that's the good thing about reality. And this is why even the things that we actually experience on a daily basis, the more we want to grasp it, pin it down, we cannot. So instead of thinking this is a bad thing, we should be actually thinking this is a good thing. And that's what Buddhism teaches. Because otherwise, you may be driven to nihilism. Nihilism. So nihilism is always there. Because everything has the nature of emptiness, nothingness, as Buddhism teaches. So if you don't actually understand emptiness properly, and most of us, we do have some kind of intuitive understanding of emptiness anyway. This is the Buddhist view, really, subjectively and in relation to how we view the world objectively. There's a sense that everything really doesn't have enduring significance or something like that. And then that can set us off and thinking, well, nothing matters, everything is, things have gone down the tube or gone to the dogs or whatever. Whatever that means, gone to the dogs.
It's very
poor dogs, give them a break.
They didn't do anything.
So then, you become very nihilistic. But that is not the Buddhist view. I think what William Siegel was saying in terms of expressing these things using slightly positive kind of terms like potentiality. Mm-hmm. And I think one other word that he used to use, and that some people, all this I got off the internet, by the way. He used to use the word potentiation or something, and some of his friends and colleagues used to find him really fascinating because he used to coin new words, and potentiation was one of them. So I think that kind of thing, which means everything is possible because of emptiness. So then you don't go down the nihilistic path, you see, because everything arises from emptiness and everything dissipates back into emptiness. It's like, excuse me, watching a clear sky, and then suddenly you see clouds gathering, and then all this turbulence go on, sometimes thunder, lightning, and all kinds of activities there. But then just as quickly, the clouds begin to move on and dissipate, and the empty sky is revealed yet again.
One of the great moments I thought in the film was Mr. Siegel quoting his wife, Marielle, who's here tonight, saying that love multiplies.
Yes,
and I remember speaking to you before this evening began that my 5-year-old daughter, when she was 3, I had told her that I loved her infinity times infinity. And one night as I was putting her to bed, she told me that infinity wasn't the largest number. Yes. And that it was really old zero.
Yes, yes.
And I couldn't believe that this 3-year-old had figured it out and had that. She now doesn't remember that. It was a sadness. What we do have now in the few minutes that we have remaining is to open this up for questions from you all, if you have them, and we'd be happy to do that. Tim, are we willing to shout them out, or how do you wish to?
No, we've got microphones on either side of the house. Actually, can you talk a microphone over there?
It's on my chair right there.
Learn more about Zero. You'll just have to come, I think, on the 19th of December when Rory Anderson will be on stage with Charles Seif, who wrote the sort of history of Zero, including this idea. So get tickets for that in the meantime. Rinpoche, thank you for doing your research. I'm quite impressed. I like an arm who does it.
Right. I have to thank Google, because,
Which may be a bigger number than infinity, right?
I wonder if you Google emptiness, I wonder how many returns you get.
Well, there's also, as I was reminded about this Western trap of duality, of the famous men's room graffiti that said, "To be is to do," Descartes. To do is